Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, where we talk about meat and monsters. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're looking at Hellbound, Hellraiser II. Hellbound takes place immediately after the events of the first movie. We find Kirsty has been confined to a psychiatric hospital where she ends up kicking it with Julia, Frank, and the Cenobites again, thanks to the Cenobite Stan, Dr. Channard. Hellbound was released in 1988, just a year after the original. Clive Barker was still primarily responsible for the story, so it still has a lot of the same tone and general feel as the original. Hellbound was directed by Tony Randall, who was a supervisor for the original Hellraiser. Randall has since directed Children of the Night, Ticks, Fist of the North Star, The Doubleborn, and the most terrifying of all, A Doggone Adventure. He also has a ton of writer, editor, and producer credits. It's a lot of sci-fi and low-budget horror, but he's been working steadily since the 80s and is still working on things today. Last time I talked about Hellraiser's minuscule budget, but I didn't mention how much it made. Hellraiser had a box office of $14.6 million, which is what led to the immediacy of the sequel. This time around they were given $6 million to work with. Hellbound ended up having a box office of $12 million, doubling their budget and ensuring a sequel. Where Hellraiser is pretty much well regarded, sitting in the mid-70s on Rotten Tomatoes, Hellbound is a bit more divisive, sitting more in the 50s range. Hellbound brings a lot to the table, but not all of it is good. Thanks to most of the cast returning, there is a strong feeling of continuity as well as visual style. Hellbound is a bit more surreal than the original, which I think varied in its effectiveness, and the score by Christopher Young is really, really solid. This movie is where a lot of the world building in the Hellraiser fandom begins, but perhaps there is too much too soon. The third act is just a mess, and the ending is, in my opinion, one of the worst in the series. But let's actually get into the movie before I really start dissecting. The movie starts with a really long, really chaotic recap of the ending of the first movie, which I typically find to be unnecessary. I get the idea of wanting to give newcomers some idea of what's going on, but this just seemed like a cheap way to add gore and grab attention. I am a little glad they included it, as they were able to include a little bit more of the shot of Frank being ripped apart. We open on Captain Elliot Spencer, a World War I soldier playing with the Lament configuration. It's nice to see Doug in his own skin for once. The box opens up and gets him with the old hook maneuver. We then get a montage of Spencer being tortured, eventually turning into the figure we know as Pinhead. This is our first indication that the Cenobites were once people. We get a glimpse of these weird tentacle things adding the pins to his head. If only we knew how many more were to come. Kirsty wakes up in a psychiatric hospital called the Channard Institute and is greeted by Officer Ronson. He informs her that her unimportant boyfriend Steve was already released, so luckily he won't be around to bother us. But I already don't understand a few things. Why and how did they end up at a psychiatric hospital? Did they go to the police after the bone dragon flew away? The officer acknowledged Steve told some crazy stories, but they let him go but not Kirsty, and he just left her? Ronson says he was at Larry's house, so it's clear at least some dead bodies have been discovered. But the cops interviewed Steve, knew he was at the house, where the murders happened. He talked about the fucking engineer and the Cenobites, and they let his ass go? Huh. Officers are searching Larry's house, confirming that it did not burn down and the end of the first movie took place in some other location. They are finding all of the decomposed bodies of the men that were killed, but it seems like there isn't any evidence of Julia, Frank, or Butterball, so I guess the box cleaned up most of the Cenobite damage. I'm not certain if Larry's body is included in the ones found. The officers do take a blood-soaked mattress, the one that Julia was killed on. We then meet Dr. Channard, who in the middle of a brain surgery is rambling on and on about how we must continue to experiment and push to uncover the secrets of the mind. Channard and his assistant Kyle enter Kirsty's room. As Bronson is leaving, she begs him to destroy the mattress. I don't know why Kirsty would know how the whole blood coming back process works. I don't recall Frank and Julia really explaining it to her, but fuck it, exposition I guess, because Channard definitely took note. Kirsty wakes up to the sound of a different kind of puzzle box, one being put together by Tiffany. Creepy Kyle, as I'm going to call him, explains Tiffany showed up here 6 months ago and has no family or visitors. Also, she is completely mute for some reason. Also, for some reason, she sits and does puzzles all fucking day long. I wonder if that will ever come into play. Kyle tries to give Kirsty some sleep meds, which she refuses. so she can wander around and refuse medication, but she can't leave. Or can she? I'm not fucking sure about anything at this point. Just as Kirsty lays down, a bloody hand starts writing on the wall, and that bloody hand belongs to a bloody body. The skinless gentleman writes, "Help me, I'm in hell." He disappears, but the message remains. Tasty blood. Channard takes the elevator down below the basement to the maintenance floor, where we see he keeps the most severe cases in their own solitary confinement. Kirsty explains to Kyle that her dad visited her, thinking the skinless body was Larry sending the message. On his way to talk to Channard, Kyle overhears him talking about a mattress being delivered to his house in secret. He plays it cool though. Kirsty then gives Channard and Kyle her synopsis of the first film, explaining Frank and Julia's affair, the box, Frank's resurrection, the Man-Witch plan, her deal with the Cenobites, Larry's murder, Julia's murder on the mattress, and Frank's murder, all while reusing shots from the original, including the Frank face chunks. That night, Channard has secured the murder mattress. Kyle decides to break into Channard's house. What? I guess that overhearing that telephone conversation was sketchy, but even if he was correct in assuming it was the murder mattress, isn't Channard his lifelong mentor? I don't know, this seems pretty far-fetched. Well, Kyle sees the bed, which he acknowledges by saying, "Weird." He also sees a bunch of Hellraiser type stuff, including 3 puzzle boxes. He also finds some readings about psychic phenomena, life after death, and a picture of human Pinhead. Channard brings one of his maintenance patients home. This man believes he is covered in bugs and is covered in cuts and lesions from trying to get them off. Channard puts him on a mattress and hands him a razor. The man proceeds to cut himself for a really long time until finally Julia pops out, and after a bit of struggle, she feeds on him. Kyle is almost found, but he is able to sneak out after the killing. Skinless Julia looks pretty great. The next morning, Julia is grumpy about having no skin, so Channard wraps her up in gauze, giving her more of an invisible man look. I love the look of Julia in this big, all-white home, very surreal looking. Julia is so flattered she gives old Channard a smooch and a booby grab. I didn't realize until my second time watching through to write the script, but there is a frontal close-up shot of skinless Julia's vagina, which I assume was part of the costume. It was honestly really, really weird to realize. Anyway, Julia wants some new skin. Kirsty comes out of the shower to see creepy Kyle, who says everything is true and they need to get out of there. Her clothes are gone and Kyle very pathetically says he can get her clothes. He is a doctor. This kind of thing has happened a couple of times. He is so unconfident, it's hilarious. Also, why the fuck doesn't anybody call him doctor? He is simply known as Kyle, which is both unprofessional and sad. After receiving clothes, Kyle tells Kirsty about the boxes, and Kirsty decides to go to Channard's to kill Julia and save Larry. And of course our boy Creepy Kyle is tagging along. Meanwhile, Julia has slurped up a lot of ladies, not sure if they were patients or not. And for some reason, after slurping this lady, Julia has her original skin back. But why didn't that happen to Frank in the original? Did he just not slurp enough guys for his own skin to grow back, so he just took Larry's? So Kirsty and Kyle sneak into Channard's house. Kyle gets to the room where all the dead women are, where he finds Julia and she pretends to be good, I guess. I don't understand who Kyle thinks she is, what she is doing there, or why she can be trusted in any capacity. Kirsty is still in Channard's office when she peeps human Pinhead, as well as a diagram of his pin placement. Kyle for some reason allows Julia to embrace him, and she proceeds to degenerate him, finishing the back of her skin. Kirsty hears Kyle's corpse drop and goes to find him, taking the photo of Elliot Spencer with her. Kirsty finds Kyle, and then Julia slaps her unconscious. Then Channard walks in with Tiffany to get some puzzle action started. Julia asks if he's sure this is what he wants. Channard says he has to know because, that's his whole shtick in this movie. At this point, you may be wondering why the hell Julia is okay with summoning the Cenobites, but that will all be made clear soon. Well, Tiffany, our new puzzle master, obviously figures out the box and the Cenobites emerge. Julia and Channard were watching from a one-way mirror and sneak into hell. We have the 4 OGs, Chatterer, Butterball, Female, and of course Pinhead. The Gash is ready to kill Tiffany, but Pinhead stops them, acknowledging Tiffany was just a tool to open the box and someone else was the one who desired it. I think this is an interesting move. It makes more sense to me that the Cenobites work with purpose and rules, not just killing at random, but I do think when Kirsty opened the box in the original, she didn't exactly desire the outcome, but I guess the box tempted her so it counts maybe. So the Cenobites head back inside. Julia and Chenard are wandering hell now, which looks like a shitty haunted house carnival attraction. Kirsty wakes up, grabs the puzzle box, and heads inside too. She wanders around hell, which is even more maze-like, and in faraway shots is just an image of a big, cavernous labyrinth, resembling an M.C. Escher painting. We then see Tiffany's dumbass wandered in too. She is in what is literally a carnival-themed portion of hell, which is so fucking stupid and not scary, but allows them to use a Hall of Mirrors shot. It is made clear that Tiffany's mom brought her to Chenard Institute to help her, but Chenard killed her and took Tiffany. Kirsty finds herself in a domestic space with pictures of her family, but things start bleeding and stuff and she awakens to the Cenobites. Kirsty tries to use the box on them, but they are already in hell, so it's useless. The box flies up in the air and changes shape into more of a diamond. Kirsty says she came for her father, but the Cenobites say he isn't there and Kirsty is in her own personal hell. Kirsty asked what about them, implying that they are also in their own personal hell, to which they say they've always been here. Pinhead allows her to explore, as they have her for an eternity now. Kirsty finds Tiffany and she urges her to use the box to close the portal. We rejoin Chenard and Julia, and it's becoming clear Julia has something planned for Chenard. Julia shows him Leviathan, Lord of the Labyrinth. Leviathan is literally just a huge version of the puzzle box and shoots out a big black fog. Apparently Julia now serves Leviathan and was sent back with the goal of bringing new souls. So Julia is just down with the Cenobite life, I guess. She's only been dead a couple days, but I'm sure time works differently here. A big box appears and Julia puts Chenard in, and a bunch of weird tentacles start cutting him and injecting him with stuff as the box floats away. Kirsty finds the door to the house from the first movie and believes her dad is inside. But the room isn't quite like home. It has a revolving group of naked women under sheets, who disappear if you remove the sheets. Kirsty sees the "Help Me" message on a mirror, and with the flick of a switchblade, Frank emerges, revealing he is the one who called her. Frank starts getting incesty with her again, explaining that those sheet ladies are there to eternally tease him. Is that his whole punishment? Just being eternally horny? There must be more to it than that, but apparently that was why he was able to call out to her. That I also don't understand. Was he allowed to call out to her by the Cenobites, or was it a breaking of the rules? Who knows? Kirsty pretends to be DTF, but grabs the sheet and throws it on the fire, and somehow everything lights the fuck up in flames. Frank's skin burns off because that's what happens in these movies. So now we're back to Skinless Frank when Julia appears with Tiffany. Frank somehow doesn't think Julia would be mad at him for killing her, and continues to speak about her like she is his object. Well, Julia rips his heart out, maybe killing him? I don't know if you can die in hell. Julia also has the box now. Kirsty and Tiffany run and all of a sudden some sort of wind tunnel appears and tries to suck them in. Julia walks up talking shit, but Kirsty once again says nah and pushes Julia into the vacuum. Julia starts climbing back and Tiffany offers her a hand, I think because she wants the box, but the wind pulls Julia out of her skin because of course and she flies away. Please note Tiffany drops the skin suit and it does not get sucked away. Meanwhile, Chenard emerges from the box in his new Cenobite form, very pleased with the results. Leviathan drills his big tentacled dick into his head and to finish the job. Kirsty and Tiffany run into a new area resembling the hospital, where Chenard makes his grand entrance. Tiffany says her first word of the movie. Stop-motion tentacled dick things emerge from Chenard's hands. The tentacles then protrude scalpels and stuff and he kills the patients. Also for the rest of the movie, Cenobite Chenard spouts shitty medical puns and it's just awful. Kirsty and Tiffany once again run and enter a new room, this one a bit more familiar. It's got lots of hooks, chains, that weird pillar, and Cenobites. Chatterer has eyes now. Apparently the actor has been requesting that since the first movie because he obviously couldn't see anything. There was also apparently a deleted scene in Hellbound where he received his eyes, but now he just apparently has them and we aren't supposed to worry about it. Kirsty once again tries to persuade the Cenobites who have no interest in her bargains. She says she only has information for them, and you know Pinhead is a curious guy, so he participates. She hands him the photo of his human form, and at first he does not recognize himself, but after some pushing by Kirsty he is able to remember, as do the rest of the Cenobites. I don't know about the rest of you, but I didn't think that the Cenobites were people and forgot. I just figured they were humans similar to Chenard, who were into this kind of thing and enjoyed being Cenobites. But for some reason, this is a huge revelation to the Cenobites. Chenard appears and tries to kill Tiffany, and for some reason the OG Cenobites decide to fight him. Is this just a battle for power or territory, or because the Cenobites have a change of heart about being Cenobites? Pinhead uses his hook technique and ensnares Channard, but he uses his dick fingers to break the chains. Channard then literally within the span of 30 seconds kills Female, Butterball, and Chatterer like it's nothing. This is a million times worse than the stupid box technique. It's so disappointing to see what are supposed to be the big bads be destroyed. The Cenobites also return to their human forms upon death for some reason. Channard is somehow able to return Pinhead to his human form before killing him. Channard slashes his throat and we watch Pinhead die. What a fucking shame. So our final boss is Channard. Well, Tiffany talks now and wants to go back to get the box, which is still sitting next to the Julia skin. Tiffany and Kirsty approach Leviathan, which is a lot less scary than it should be. Tiffany begins to solve the puzzle when Channard appears. He tosses Kirsty to the side. He especially wants to torture Tiffany. Kirsty runs off as Channard corners Tiffany and spouts more shitty one-liners. Just as he's about to kill her, what is obviously Kirsty in Julia's skin emerges and distracts Channard with a kiss, giving Tiffany enough time to solve the puzzle, returning it to its original shape. This angers Channard, who tries to kill her, but Leviathan removes his dick from Channard, taking out the top half of his head with it. Tiffany almost falls, but Kirsty manages to help her. She removes Julia's skin as if it was some big reveal. Leviathan starts freaking out with those shitty effects from the first movie. They manage to escape and the portal closes. Kirsty and Tiffany just leave after that. Fuck the police involvement in the beginning, I guess. We cut to Channard's house. All of his things are boxed up and being moved. Don't ask me where or by who. The movers don't even know. And would you fucking look at that? It's the creepy mover guy from the first movie. You mean he actually works for a moving company? I assumed he was just some dude Larry hired. That makes him twice as shitty. Well, shitty mover guy finds the mattress, you know, the one that the cops definitely would be looking for. He touches the blood on the bed, and some arms come out and grab him. His coworker finds him halfway pulled into the bed. And what do you know, that stupid pillar comes out of the bed in a really bad attempt at green screen. The pillar looks so fucking cartoonish, it's ridiculous. Look at that toy baby. The pillar has Pinhead's face as well as the derelict, who repeats his one and only line to end the movie. What is your pleasure? I guess that's supposed to be our cue. There will be another one of these masterpieces. So that's Hellbound. Similarly to the original, there are parts I love and parts I absolutely hate, except this time around I think there's more hate than love. The plot just has far too many logistic holes, but by far and wide, my biggest issues are in the final act. The whole Cenobites used to be human thing amounted to absolutely nothing. It could have been completely taken out and it wouldn't have made a difference. Was it supposed to be some sort of redemption for the Cenobites? What if Channard hadn't emerged at that moment? Would they have let Kirsty and Tiffany go? And then there is the grandest sin of them all, killing the Cenobites. First of all, I have no idea how you can die when you're already in hell, especially when you're a demon. I have to imagine you're just going to be brought back in some fashion, like Pinhead in that stupid pillar. But if that's the case, what's the point? Channard seemed pretty dead, as did the rest of the Cenobites, and Frank and Julia. And were those poor hospital patients actually there? I don't understand how that would work. It's not like the portal opened at the hospital, it opened at Channard's house. Whatever, had to up the body count, I guess. But back to my point, killing off the Cenobites was an absurd, disappointing decision. This would have been the time to show what the Cenobites are really capable of, but apparently they're capable of absolutely nothing. This should have been an epic, gruesome battle. If Pinhead has the hooks and Channard has the stupid dick fingers, all of the Cenobites should have had some sort of strange ability. Maybe Butterball's stomach would open up to be a giant mouth. Maybe Female can use her open throat to produce some sort of high-pitched scream that destroys hearing. I don't know, I'm just spitballing. But the powers and abilities of characters is just so random and imbalanced. Frank and Julia are fine with their skin being ripped off, but Chatterer can't handle a simple spear. It doesn't add up. And the OG Cenobites, even if it was just Pinhead who survives, should have come out on top. The issue is nobody believes for a second that Channard is going to successfully kill Kirsty or Tiffany. At least with the other Cenobites we aren't so sure. Not to mention the outlandishness of Cenobite Channard. He is the first example of these really specifically themed Cenobites that just aren't scary. Those will really be on display in the next movie. Sorry if I'm pretty much just complaining here, but I really do just hate this movie from a narrative standpoint. It takes everything good about the original and by the end reduces it to crap. All of the new characters are just shitty archetypes, and it even reduces older characters in that respect as well. There is a continuous reference to fairy tales that just doesn't have any important place in the movie. And have I mentioned how lazy of a decision Tiffany is? Like, we have to have a way to open the box, even though Kirsty opened it in the first one with no issue. So we'll have a patient who just happens to be fixated with puzzles. Oh, but we don't want to do much character development, so let's make her not talk. Wow. Effective storytelling. Okay, I'm going to stop complaining and try to end on a positive note. I'm glad we were able to see all 4 of the original Cenobites again and that they all still looked great, despite Chatterer having eyes at the end. The skinless costumes looked just as good, if not better, this time around, and I already mentioned it, but the score was great. It added a ton of tension to scenes that otherwise may not have been so strong, and despite a few unanswered questions, I think the first 2/3 of the movie is pretty strong. It isn't until we get Cenobite Chenard that shit really hits the fan. Well, that's about it. Despite all the mean things I had to say, I would probably still recommend this if you enjoyed the original. I don't know if it needed to be an hour and 40 minutes, but it has enough different plots and characters to keep itself busy in that time. So whether you like it or not, you won't be bored while you watch Hellbound. Up next, we'll be looking at Hellraiser III, Hell on Earth. Until then, I'm Noah Hook. Thanks for tuning in to Horror and Hamburgers. See you next time.